All right, let's go ahead and get started. I'd like to thank everyone who's joining us. Welcome to today's CNCF webinar, Charting Your Voyage to Helm 3. I'm Karen Chu, Community Manager at Azure Container Compute on the Azure Container Compute team and CNCF Ambassador. I'll be moderating today's webinar and would like to thank our presenters today. We have Matt Farina, Senior Staff Engineer at Samsung, Martin Hickey, Senior Software Engineer at IBM, Adam Reese, Senior Software Engineer at Microsoft, and Bridget Kromhout, Principal Program Manager at Microsoft. And just before we start, we have a few housekeeping items. During the webinar, you will not be able to talk as an attendee. There is a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Please feel free to drop in your questions and we'll get through as many as we can. This is an official CNCF webinar, so as such, it is subject to the CNCF code of conduct. Please do not add anything to the chat or questions that would be in violation of the code of conduct. Basically, please be respectful of all your fellow participants and presenters. Please also note that the recording will be posted later today to the CNCF webinar at cncf.io/webinars. And with that, I will hand it over to Matt, Martin, Adam, and Bridget to kick off today's presentation.
Thank you so much, Karen. Okay, so we've got our panelists and we have our topic being Helm 2 to Helm 3. Let's hear from each of our panelists as to what their specific interest in this is, and then we'll start talking about why. Start with you, Farina.
Well, thank you. So my interest in the Helm 2 to Helm 3 move is, well, Helm 2 has its end of life coming up here, and it's really different from Helm 3 architecturally. And so it's a lot of extra work for us to support both versions. And we've got a good year of overlap. And when that comes to an end, we're going to be supporting Helm 3. And yet we want everybody to be supported, get security updates, and be on the path forward. And so that's really my big interest in Helm 3. I do have a side interest, though. So Helm 2 is connected to the stable repository that the Helm organization serves up. And the stable repository has tons of charts in it and moves and has moved at such a fast pace that in many ways it became, well, difficult to maintain. And in Helm 3, we've now switched to a distributed model using the Helm Hub and other things so that people like you out there who are listening can run your own repositories and we get out of the way. Right? It takes a long time sometimes to get reviews and things merged, and it can be frustration working with us maintainers of the charts repo. And in Helm 3, you can run things yourself, and searching, it's all first-class citizen. And so I'm interested in seeing people be able to move to that model where we get out of the way and the charts that are available can go far beyond what we could maintain as the Helm project.
That is a very compelling argument. Thank you, Matt Farina. All right, Martin, you want to tell us about what's your interest in this topic?
Thanks, Bridget. So from my perspective, I suppose I've come in around looking at the Helm 3 stuff and working on that. And for me, I suppose the big thing is that I suppose because things have moved on since when Helm 2 was first created, and now we got Helm 3, it has allowed the people from the community to work on this. The changes have been made, have been able to say, okay, we can simplify it. We can take Tiller out. We can talk directly to the Kubernetes API server. And it's just the progress that has come along. As Matt touched on earlier, it has changed. The change under the hood between Helm 2 and Helm 3 is quite big. The infrastructure has changed, the plumbing has changed in there, and they're quite different code bases, so to speak. So I think for me, getting people to move over, getting them to see what the simplification is, how it makes your life a little bit easier in ways, and as Matt touched on as well, is trying to support two code bases like this is going to be quite difficult. We know going down the line, we're going to be end of service or end of life for the Helm 2 code base. So I think for a lot of people, you know, when they start using Helm 3, when they see that the benefits of it that's there, I think, you know, it's just getting over that fact. Can we migrate across and so forth? I think that may be the big bridge to jump, which we'll talk about. But yeah, just getting people on there, seeing what's there and seeing what's available.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's I think that's why it's really exciting that we're having this discussion today. And last but certainly not least, I want to hear from you, Adam. What's your thinking around this exciting move?
Thanks, Bridget. Hey, everybody. My involvement with Helm 3 was very deep in the code, initial architecture stuff. So we tried to keep it as seamless as possible for the end user. A lot of big architecture changes, which Martin was talking about. Not a terrible amount of changes to the chart package. So I would just like to ease people's comfort with switching to Helm 3. It is a much simpler architecture. It's a lot easier to debug stuff. Helm 1 actually had this architecture, and going to the client server, we thought we could improve it again with simplification, with debugging, with really knowing what's going on. That's about it.
That's fantastic. So this is a different model than a lot of webinars, and we might talk over each other, and that's okay, because I think we're all pretty excited about this topic. I think probably let's just dive in. You all kind of alluded to things being different and conceptually, architecturally, about the practical standpoint. Like, what are people going to notice?
Tiller's gone.
We've gotten a lot of reactions around that, a lot of positive reaction. And I think when we say, you know, Tiller is gone, people immediately think things are very different. What should I expect?
So I'll jump in here because I'm quick to jump in on things. So feel free, Martin, Adam, to interrupt, talk over, and add to. Tiller was added in Helm 2. It was added with the merger of Helm version 1, which didn't have a server-side component, and Deployment Manager, which is a Kubernetes project when the two merged together. And Deployment Manager had the server-side component. And it turns out that there was a lot going on there. One, controllers at the time, this was before custom controllers and Kubernetes and all of that stuff. And so Tiller acted very much as a custom controller, but that created lots of problems because as custom controllers became more mature, Tiller already had an architecture. And we were very, very big into backwards compatibility because Kubernetes changes a lot. Let's be honest, there's a lot of changes in Kubernetes, but we want Helm to be very stable and in long use. And so it doesn't move out from underneath you as you're using it. And so we needed to change something. And one of the things we realized in Helm 3 was we didn't need the server-side component anymore. We could do everything client-side the way it wasn't done in the beginning. And that also expands the use cases because in order to install a modern controller and do some of those things, you need admin-level permissions in a cluster. And I've learned that not every cluster operator, every organization that lets you run a cluster is going to let you install those cluster level things to install applications. And so by also removing it, we not only simplified the architecture, but we expanded the potential audience of Helm people as well. And so I like that switch, and it simplified things.
Yeah, I'll jump in with one other thing with removing Tiller as well. In talking about the controller model, when we came out with Helm 2, we really didn't fully understand how Kubernetes was going to be used in an organization yet. We had some input, but we weren't sure about, permissions around user accounts weren't available yet. There was no such thing as RBAC yet. So there was limitations with having an internal server component create all the resources. Because then it was Tiller responsible for creating everything. So it was the user of Tiller. So it didn't matter which user was trying to do a release. It would be everything from the one user account. So there was no way of doing RBAC. And the client architecture allows us to go straight from the user creating all the resources.
Well, maybe here's a way to think of it too, right? In Kubernetes terms, Helm 2 and Tiller were pretty old, right? I was looking it up. So Tiller was created and Helm 2 was released before secrets were stable, right? Think about that. And some of you who are listening may not have been doing Kubernetes things back when secrets weren't stable, right?
In the dark
it's
ages
old
when
in terms of the dark.
dinosaurs roamed the earth.
Yes, yes. So, there was that going on. So, another thing, since we're able to do this, and I think Adam, you actually might have been the person who did this work. Helm init's gone, right? Because Helm init was there to install Tiller, and when you don't need it, you don't need Helm init. So it's a lot simpler experience in that capacity too.
Yeah, that's the other nice thing is just if you have the Helm binary, you're ready to go. There's no setup.
And I think that's what Matt has said there, and what you say as well, Adam, is that is a big point for users, and it's something that comes in a lot about I ran Helm init and nothing happened. The command's not there any longer, and it does surprise people. So it's that simplification around it. As you say, one binary. You're not worried about the Tiller service running in the cluster. You're not worried about connection issues. How often have we seen the RPC connection issue? Those kind of things. So it is kind of that simplification, which then transfers up to the user level. So when they don't have to deal with certain things like that. So generally now, because you have the binary talking directly to the API service, that if you can connect to your cluster with kubectl or kubectl, then basically Helm should be able to connect.
Yeah, and Helm uses those same credentials, right? So when you log in with kubectl or you log in with those same credentials, Helm just picks that up and uses it server side. And you could totally do that in Helm v2 through some total backwards ways in the developer documentation that I doubt most people did.
Yeah, what's nice as well to that, as you said, is Matt, you can build on it. So as well as using the kubeconfig files, you can also override using args on the command line as well. So if you have a lot of kube contexts and you want to use them on the fly, instead of changing the context the whole time, you can just call it directly with Helm when you run the command.
Yeah.
Oh,
so another change.
Go ahead, I just wanted to interject and say we have had people note that we did push forward the amount of time we were going to do bug fixes due to the current COVID situation. And we still plan on having our November 13th date for being done with bug fixes and security fixes. Bug fixes, I think we pushed to like August or so, and then security fixes for November. That is the current plan. All plans can change. We don't currently plan on changing it.
Can I throw a curveball in here?
Mm-hmm.
I see a nice question from the community. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna answer some of this, but I want to bring it over to Matt then, because it's really up his alley, and also hopefully he'll bat it out of the park once I'm finished. So sorry for the curveball that's coming your way. So there's a question in from a person on the talk, and I'll just read the question out quickly. Oh my goodness, there's words with TH, isn't it? So Helm 3 is more compelling in every way, and it makes sense to move over as fast as possible. That being said, why is it taking so long for official Helm 3 charts to replace their Helm 2 versions? I would think anyone who has a product that runs in Kubernetes would have an official Helm 3 chart by now. Okay, so I'm just going to take the initial part of this. I think that's a really good question, Jay. Just to answer from the perspective, like first and foremost, Helm 2 charts can still run, be rendered and deployed with Helm 3. So there's no problem that way. And it will use the API version v1 in the chart. If you don't have it, it takes v1 by default. For any new capabilities we put in charts, your chart needs to become then API version v2. So your charts don't have to get changed over for the Helm 3 format. They can be still used. Now, one exception around that are CRDs, which we may tackle later on. And what's happened with CRDs is there's a different way to install them now, and we're not using the CRD hooks anymore. But as I say, you can still run your charts, can still render and deploy them, and that's the most important thing. So I'm going to hand over to Matt now into relation of what you think the strategies around charts moving forward. What charts do you think that need to become using the Helm 3 format or API version v2, and I suppose your overall experience from the charting.
Okay, but first I'm going to let people in on one of our little inside secrets here. So yes, Martin's shaking his head because when you hear him say Helm 3, one of the words, because of his accent, it sounds kind of like tree, like a tree in your yard. And so every time I hear Martin say Helm 3, I hear him say Helm tree. And I just laugh inside. I laugh inside. It's amusing to me. It's one of our little inside jokes. Martin has a good sense of humor about it, but maybe you can't unhear that now too. So when I think about the charts repos, and the reason that we don't have more Helm 3 ones is actually because Helm 2 charts, with the exception of that CRD difference, can run in Helm 3. And if you're going to go ahead and if we're going to support Helm 2 and Helm 3, and there's lots of Helm 2 users still in the wild, maybe like many of you who are looking to switch, then you want to have maybe one version of a chart that you support that can run in both places. And so if you've got a chart you want to support both Helm 2 and Helm 3, you use a Helm v1 chart, right? With API version 1 that ran in Helm 2. And if you want it to, you've got CRDs where you want it to work in both. You have the CRD directory with the CRDs, and you have the CRD hooks. You have to do a little dual duty there. But if you do that, then it'll install in both versions and in both locations. So I expect to see a lot more Helm 3 native charts to show up and people to switch to those features once Helm 2 is no longer supported. But right now you want to have that dual layer of support for both versions and both users. And so that's when I expect it. We are moving away from having the Helm project have an official charts repository. We're not going to have this big charts repository, quite frankly, because it grew to be mostly unmaintainable. We had lots of people who would be maintainers of the charts repo who would burn out attempting to spend lots of time. And we're never able to keep up with the load, no matter how many different automation things or different layers we put in. And it just became hard. And so our hope is by going to a distributed model, we move all of that out so it's across many more people. And that officially comes with Helm 3 as well, because the stable repository is not included by default, and that'll be deprecated too.
Wait, so you're saying distributed systems work even with humans? I like it.
Maybe. We'll see.
Yeah, one more thing on that topic too is charts are like the package format, which is actually versioned differently than Helm. Helm is how you manage them, do releases and all that. So you'll notice that the versioning doesn't match up with the Helm binary, because right now we're on chart version 2 is the highest with Helm version 3. So we're going to try to remain backwards compatibility with charts moving forward. Helm 3, it was just laying the foundation mostly for feature adds going forward and simplification.
And I think this kind of touches on one of the broader topics that we see a lot in the community, which is people come up to Helm and they have a great idea for something that might help a sliver of a use case, maybe just them, and they want it to be in core Helm. And where some projects might be like, hey, cool, roll up with the code, we'll do it. Helm is a project that's used by so many people in production for realsies that we probably aren't going to make super rash decisions like that. You just pulled all the numbers, didn't you, Farina? They're in a blog post that the CNCF put out, so people can go read about these numbers. But it's used pretty frequently.
Yeah, I didn't pull the numbers. Credit to the CNCF. The only number I pulled was yes, they did. The only number that I pulled was the 2 million downloads in a month, which is massive, because when we were, in San Diego, at KubeCon San Diego, Cloud Native Con San Diego, it was 1 million in a month. And then fast forward to Helm's graduation less than 6 months later, and it had jumped to 2. That just blows my mind, quite frankly, to the number of downloads we get from all the different places it's downloaded. But that was really the CNCF. But because so many people use it, we don't look to make radical changes. We want to make stable, well-tested changes, and we're slow to make changes. But because we know that there's a lot of people who want to expand around it, we do like it when people write wrapper programs around Helm. So, ooh, I want this logic and these extra things. Well, I can do it with 2 steps with Helm or a step with Helm and kube control in my CI system. Instead of adding the feature to Helm, sometimes it works to wrap it with your own script, and we like that. We also have plugins. So Helm does have plugins in order to expand on things. And those are in Helm 2 and Helm 3.
And just kind of jumping on that one, what Bridget was saying and what you were saying there, Matt, one thing I learned when I first came on the Helm project was, we don't break the APIs. We are backwards compatible. And initially I thought this was some cult kind of initiation ceremony. But I have to say, I've worked on different software over the years. Helm abides by the APIs. And I remember early on reviewing a piece of code, and the code was grand, it was perfect. And then, someone said to me, well, that's breaking the API. And I looked at them and went, oh, yeah, you're right. We don't break the API. So, kind of what Bridget was saying, there was people often look for functionality and they're wondering, why can't I get that in there? And we might say something like, that'll go into Helm 3, or no, it might go into Helm 4. That's the reason behind it, is that we don't want to break that backwards compatibility and just keep that. So I think it's a very good, practice that has been in the community all these years, and what I've seen since I've joined.
Yeah, it's a hard thing too, because we get a lot of people who put in a lot of effort and open pull requests, and then we have to push back and let them know, like, this is not fitting with our SLA contract. We're sorry, but we can't accept it. And that's such a hard thing to do, especially when it's going to fix their problems, and it might be a really good thing, but I think remaining backwards compatible is a huge deal.
Yeah. And it's not that we're going to not do some of these things. Like, I remember this one. So we have this annoying thing where there's just one place where dates are in a different format. One place, and we really want to fix it. But there are tools that parse the output and use the date today. So we would break those tools that are using this date today. So we really want to fix it. And we're totally changing it in Helm 4. But it's an API contract because things consume the output of it today, and we're going to break them if we change the date string format, right? Because there are other things written in Go, so they parse it in a certain format, and we're going to break them. And people use all this stuff in production. And so we have to wait till Helm 4 to fix this, or we have to add a flag on, and we're tentative about adding 1,000 flags, right? And so sometimes we even suffer through things that aren't ideal in a perfect world, but they're totally livable in order to give everybody a stable environment.
Yeah, and that's actually a really good segue to, I think, one question that's in everyone's mind, because they got to migrate at some point. And we talked a little bit about this before, but like this idea of Helm 3, what if I just take my Helm 2 release exactly as it is? How does that work? Not my charts, but like my release. What is that experience?
I give that a go.
Like, can Helm 3 manage your Helm 2 release?
Would I try that?
Martin, have at it. What do you think about this one?
I volunteer, Martin.
Martin.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Ken? Oh yeah, sorry. I thought you were just, see, you're just playing a game on me. I thought you couldn't hear me. Okay, migrations. Okay, so I think Adam made a very good point earlier, because I made a broad statement and said, look, the architecture did change quite a bit. And I'm going to say these statements again. Don't worry, Adam, calm down there. I have CPR training. The architecture has changed in Helm 3, yes, from Helm 2. The infrastructure under the hood and the code base to a certain degree. But that is under the hood, okay? So what I said earlier was your Helm 2 charts will still run, render and deploy your objects, Kubernetes objects, as always. Okay, so that's the main aspect. So where does the migration part come in? So it's really just, it's 2 parts, but they're key parts that are generally hidden away from users, except the really advanced users who like to go in what I call going the back door and do things under the hood. So years ago, if it was a database, you know, a product that had a database, it might be the person that goes in and hacks the backend database, wipes the whole database, and they can't understand why the product doesn't work anymore. Those kind of people, but, you know, those people are important too. So why we need this migration over is, first of all, it's the configuration state. So any state for the different configuration items for Helm, that has changed in Helm 3. So that's the first part that needs to be migrated over. And then the other part is how we store our release objects, okay? So yes, we're using secrets to still store our objects, and some people will say, oh yeah, but you could configure Helm 2 to store secrets. That was correct. By default, it was config maps. But it's how we store the release object now in the secrets is the important aspect, because we've changed that object. So we're no longer using because we're no longer communicating with Tiller, and we don't need gRPC and protobuf objects. We've now gone to YAML object, and that's a different format. So if what you can do at the moment is you can currently run 2 versions of Helm in your own system, managing the same cluster, or managing same applications in the same cluster. So you, as long as you change the names of the binary, because both binaries are called Helm. And what that means is the release information is stored differently, so hence both of them can communicate separately. But the point here is that if you do a Helm ls to list your deployed your different releases, you will only see the releases for Helm 3, and Helm 2 will only say the releases for Helm 2. So if you would like to now manage those Helm 2 releases and let Helm 3 take over, that's when you're going to need to do a migration. So you can have a look inside in the documentation. We have documentation around migration. Now, there are 2 aspects to this. Some people, I suppose, maybe super advanced users, like to manage migration themselves. So they might use a pattern like the Strangler pattern. And what that means is they will keep using Helm 2 for Helm 2 deployed releases and phase them out over a period of time. And then any new deployments of charts they want to do, they'll use Helm 3 instead. And what will eventually happen is you come to a period where Helm 2's releases will be depleted, and then you'll just stop using Helm 2 and you'll continue on with Helm 3. For a lot of other people, they would like a clean movement where they say, right, I would now like to see Helm 2 manage my Helm 3 releases that I've already deployed, or my Helm 2 releases I've already deployed. A lot of 2s and 3s here, sorry. So
yeah, really, I think you had that backwards, but yeah, I think we get it.
Yeah, so yeah, so it gets confusing for everyone. So what you want to do there is, can I now see, with Helm 3, can I see my Helm 2 releases? And the answer to that is yes. And we have a plugin for that. And why we have a plugin is because it's rather complex, pulling that information out, mapping that information, and then pushing it back out into the cluster. So there's a plugin called the Helm 2 to 3 plugin. Have a look for it. And that does both the map, the migration, the configuration, and the migration of the release data for you. And also, one last thing, like our suggestion here is do one pattern or the other. Some people are mixing both. So what they might do is they might say they migrate it over, but they also keep the other instance that was there until they're very sure, and then they can delete it one by one. When we say a migration like this, we do not touch the Kubernetes resources that have been deployed. We're only touching the release metadata for Helm. So that's an important aspect. So you can potentially have the Helm 2 release and Helm 3 release running still there. So for example, if you deployed my chart can be shown by Helm 2 and Helm 3, but what we'd advise you then is to clean that up so you don't walk over yourself. So there's a few things to take into account here. Have a look at the documentation, and as I say, we have the tool on this. So sorry if I've,
no. So I think there's some things to unpack there though. So the reason we have it as a plugin and not built right into Helm 3 is because, well, you only need it when you're migrating. And in a year from now, after you've migrated from Helm 2 to 3, you don't need that sitting in your code that you download all the time. It's kind of a one-off thing, which is a perfect thing to have as a plugin. It doesn't need to be baked into Helm 3 itself. And really, when Martin said we're updating the release metadata, we literally grab those config maps or secrets or whatever you stored it in before, and we convert it to the new format and stick it into the cluster. Now, what I think is really neat about how we're using secrets this time is instead of using opaque secrets, we're using type secrets. And so you can actually go look at those secrets and just filter them by type. You'll see our naming conventions and all the stuff that we packed into it. And we've compressed this down. We're even gzipping the material that sits on those these days to try to fit more things onto those release objects in a smaller pattern. But we need to have a release object in this metadata because of some of the new ways Helm does things like upgrades. Like one of the things that I forgot is Helm does a Helm 3, and one of the features of it is it does a 3-way merge. And so when it does this 3-way merge, this allows us in Helm 2, if you were using something like a service mesh and it injected a sidecar and then you went and upgraded, we might overwrite your sidecar. In Helm 3, that doesn't happen anymore. It's one of those nice little features. But in doing the comparison, we need some metadata from different states. And there's other reasons. If you're going to roll back, which is a really handy feature, if you do an upgrade and you've totally screwed up, then you can roll back, and you need to have that state to roll back to. And you don't just want to re-render the chart, you actually really want to roll back to it. So I think there's some really important reasons that we store this, but basically Martin worked on a plugin that makes it very easy, and you can do a dry run so you can see what it would look like without actually doing it, because you'll find we're very big into testing and dry runs and things like that, especially since we're talking about production assets.
We can't hear you anymore, Bridget.
Oh no. All right. So, did anybody have anything else on actually performing the migration? Did anybody test? Oh, do we have any other questions? Do you guys have anything else to add on migrations?
Adam, do you want to give a shot there?
Crickets? I think you wrote the changes that made this required, so I think some of the migration stuff's your fault.
Yeah, it is. The release objects in Helm 2 were structured that way because of some of the limitations we had with using gRPC, as well as some of the limitations around Kubernetes at the time and upgrading objects. Kubernetes has come a long way from our release of Helm 2. For example, so Helm 2, we kind of baked our own apply. So we were able to clean a lot of that stuff up. And in doing so, we had to store a lot less information in the release, which I think, Matt, you were talking about earlier with the release size.
Yeah, we talked about it the other day. The release object we're storing now is smaller. So where we ran into limits on chart sizes before, those limits, you should be able to have larger charts in Helm 3.
Yeah, because we don't have the limitations of gRPC anymore. There's limits on
etcd
the size of the transfers. Then there's limits for etcd. Kubernetes has limits for how big secrets can be. And all of those factors have kind of changed. So we were able to get away with storing a lot less information.
So Adam, since you wrote this, I'll ask you about it. Can you explain the 3-way merge we're using now and how it's different than before?
Yes, so now some recent changes have gone in. So anybody correct me if I'm wrong. But so now what we do is we actually look at in-cluster resources. Helm 2 only looked at previous release. So that means we calculated our diff based on the previous release that went in. Now there's some issues with that. If somebody goes and edits your resources under the fly, then Helm did not know about that. It would only be diffing the previous. as well as there's service meshes now and other things that modify your resources when they're already in cluster. And performing the diff and doing the patch, it would actually not take those into account. So now we're doing a three-way diff, which diffs in cluster resources as well as the previous release. So we'll only make the changes that we need to make there.
So that will prevent us from having those exciting surprises coming out of things like service meshes. Things coming from exterior to Helm will no longer give people exciting, terrifying surprises, hopefully.
Yeah, it works the same as apply does now, but instead of apply works for single resources. So you have a deployment object, you can run apply on that deployment and it will do the patching logic for live and cluster and all that. The issue is with releases is it's a collection of resources. So if stuff gets added or deleted, well, that's not part of the apply diff. So what we have is extracted that apply logic. Instead of pinning it to the actual resource, we pin it to the release. So then we have the copy of the last known state. So we're essentially doing the same thing as apply. We just needed that extra feature.
There is some exciting stuff around then. How do you handle, you know, CRDs, or like what does Helm own if anything is going to change that Helm doesn't know about? I feel like this is, I see Farina smiling because this is an area of some exciting contention. What do we do?
CRDs are hard. And I don't know that everybody has thought through the CRDs. So on the Helm project, we spent a lot of time thinking about CRDs because you can do so many things with them. There isn't just one thing. So CRDs are a cluster scoped resource that alter the API, right? Custom resource definition. You define a new object in Kubernetes. And let's say you have multi-tenancy. And so you've got two tenants who don't know about each other, and they both want to install something that uses the same CRD. And maybe one of those two tenants wants to upgrade to a newer version of the CRD. Well, they don't know about each other. So how does all of that work? Because it's not namespace scoped. These different tenants are now got objects where they walk in each other, right? And so there's so many possibilities and so many ways that Kubernetes is used that there's a lot of ways to break things with CRDs. There's lots of places where people don't even have permission to install them, where you've got to extract the CRDs from maybe a chart and hand them to a cluster operator and say, please, will you install these for me so I can install my application? Because you don't have access. And that gets into security. Somebody who wants a secure cluster doesn't want to give the whole world who manages things access to manage CRDs, because you bring security implications or practical ones of, oh, this person did something that messed with these other users of the cluster they didn't even know about, right? It's a multi-tenancy
Or if
problem.
you delete a release that has the CRD that is used in multiple places, you run the risk of cascade deleting all those resources. So this is that's huge. We're not interested in deleting production data.
And maybe that gets into one of the principles we have in Helm. When Helm manages your stuff, we're conservative about it, right? Because we don't want to accidentally be the reason that your production stuff was deleted and broken. We want to be conservative about anything that Helm is doing. And so like Helm right now doesn't delete CRDs when you delete a release, because again, it gets to the multi-tenancy. Say somebody else is also running it. If you deleted the CRD, all the custom resources would be deleted, even if just for a fraction of a second that CRD is gone. And that would be somebody else's custom resources, which would take out their application. And we don't want that. So we are looking at ways to help you manage CRDs better. But and hopefully we want to layer some changes into the future of Helm 3, but we're going to be very conservative so we don't break things.
And Matt, following on that, from talking to a few DevOps folks, because, questions come in a lot with the CRDs. That's fair. And it's usually, people bundle the CRDs inside in the same chart as the applications are in, et cetera, et cetera. And then, as you said, they can be one to multiple apps using that particular CRD. So if he was to lead it out. But what I've noticed from a good pattern I've heard from a couple of DevOps folks is that when they have used Helm for CRDs, they literally have a chart that has the particular CRD. They manage that deployment of the CRD. Then whatever applications want to create CRs from the CRD, the applications are on their own in the chart. And then afterwards, if they're getting rid of the CRDs, they manage that. So they look after the management of that as opposed to trying to get Helm to manage the whole lot of that, which is where all the complications seem to come in. Is that kind of a correct thing to say?
Yeah, and another analogy would be if you had multiple applications using like a Postgres database, and then you decide to delete one of the applications or upgrade it, and it goes ahead and deletes your entire database that multiple applications were consuming.
So principle of least surprise.
Yeah, another thing too, when we were doing the development for Helm 3, you know, CRDs are very new, even right now. They were still working on, Kubernetes was still working on, okay, how do we manage this? You know, you couldn't upgrade them. I'm not sure if you can upgrade certain parts of it now.
Yeah.
But it was very limited and we didn't know how people were going to use them. You know, for Helm 4, there might be some patterns in place. That's what's led to a lot of our re-architecting in the past, is kind of getting up to speed with the new stuff Kubernetes has. You know, Helm 2, when that was released, there wasn't even third-party resources, which is the predecessor to CRDs. Matt,
yeah. Oh, I was going to say, so I also do Kubernetes apps, and I've poked around in Kubernetes over time, going to different corners to come up with different management strategies that the Kubernetes community would think is appropriate. We ain't got nothing yet. So some of this is going to be predicated on that. We are looking for better tools, but that's kind of why CRDs are the way they are, why we'll install them. But upgrades, you're upgrading to add new versions, you're upgrading the same CRD object, right? And since right there you can mess with multi-tenancy, we're very conservative in adding features. Now, if anybody wants to help with this, feel free to reach out to me and we can talk about it. But this is why it's complicated. CRDs are complicated.
Yeah, and then one other limitation too is CRDs have to be uniquely named for the cluster. So if somebody has a custom CRD that they're creating for their application, and it's installed, then that name is taken. If another person says, oh, I'm creating something similar, here's my CRD, which is for a different application, that's not going to be possible. Where, you know, Martin was talking about managing CRDs outside of charts. That's really the safest way to do it, and the only way I have found of really getting away from all these limitations. So we've been working out ways in like pre-deployments to check to see if the CRD exists and only install it if it's not there, but don't manage it otherwise. And we haven't really figured out the best way of having Helm manage that. So my recommendation for now would be manage those external from the chart if you can.
And I think this leads us on to, it's funny because I don't want to stay on CRDs are interesting, but it leads me on to one thing we seem to have forgotten, if I'm right here. We forgot the fact that in Helm 3, we introduced the ability to reuse release names. I don't think we mentioned that, or have we? Don't think we did. And I think that's piece of capability that people really, really wanted. And what you were mentioning there about the CRDs and the naming, the same thing happened to us in Helm 2 with Tiller, and that basically our release names were against the Tiller namespace, Cube system by default, or whatever, however Tiller was set up. So now you have the ability to define your releases on the particular namespace, and that if you're one of those advanced people going in the back door, if you're looking for your releases now, they're going to be stored in the different namespaces as opposed to, put in the namespace of your each tiller instance in your cluster. So that's a piece of nice capability we put in.
Yeah, that's another big change is that, we tried to follow the same model of other Kubernetes objects where you create a deployment, you create it in a namespace for that, and it's localized to that. So we wanted to follow that same pattern where your chart is released into a single namespace, and then your naming convention could be for that namespace. Before they had to be globally unique, just like CRDs, because it was the single tiller that was managing them, and then tiller had access to all the various namespaces. So now the release objects were stored in that kube system namespace. There's ways around it, but that was the default settings. And now when you do a release into a namespace, your release is stored in that namespace. So you don't have the unique naming issue.
Oh yeah, and one other thing actually to just jump in, Adam, is nice capability you put in as well is around, and this has come on a lot where they said, holy moly, I'm after seeing, hundreds and thousands of config maps or secrets in my cluster. What in the name of goodness is this? So the nice part of this is, just remember this, every time you deploy or you upgrade a release, it deploys a secret. Well, it's secrets now by default. It deploys it out into the cluster. So you can imagine if you have 100 versions of a particular release, then that's 100 secrets, and that multiplies up by the amount of releases you have. And something that wasn't in Helm 2 was the default value. So I think the default value now is 10, if I can remember. So what happens then is it rolls over after every 10 versions. So you only keep 10 versions of a release in your history. And what it means is, a cleaner cluster, less footprint.
Nice, awesome. Well, so we are getting close to the end of our time here, even though I feel like we just started chatting about this. And so I'm going to ask all of you, and this is, I have an ulterior motive in this question. I want you to tell us what you're excited about working on in Helm right now, and it might be a different thing or the same thing, what you really want people who want to look at the repo, go to Helm, jump in, work on something, what you are going to be working on or excited about, and what you think other people who are getting started with Helm might want to work on. And I'm going to hit Farina and Martin and Adam with this question. So Farina.
All right. So things that I'm excited about with Helm and want people to know. So one of the things that I've been working on that's tangentially related to the Helm is the Artifact Hub, artifacthub.io. It's kind of like a Helm hub, but it does more artifacts, and it's another open source project. And one of the things that I really want to expose through there, but not enough people are doing, is provenance files. Now, Helm has the ability to do signing and cryptographic provenance, checking, hash checking, all this fun stuff for security. Because we live in a world. So one of the biggest ways that organizations run into problems for their users and have security issues and things like that is actually through their dependency supply chain. It turns out there's tons of dependency supply chain problems, and Helm has provenance files, and I would like to see more people use them and improvements on the usability in Helm to make that possible, and in different places where you have that to kind of expose it so people can see, ooh, these people do it or these people don't, because your supply chain is just a big deal. And I would really like to see the supply chain become more secure for organizations not getting hacked and users being safer and that kind of thing.
Nice, awesome. That's really cool. And I think that given that lots and lots of enterprises and businesses of all sorts and agencies of all sorts are using Helm, it's very exciting that they can do it in a safe and secure way. All right, Martin, what are you working on, excited about, wanting to point people towards?
I think the big thing for me, it's not because I worked on parts of it, but I think it's the migration. I'm looking forward to people, you know, and I know because, you know, I've worked in enterprise products, things take time, and we're not, you know what I mean, we don't have our heads buried in the sand. We know that people aren't going to move over to Helm 3 straight away. Some people have, some people were using it at alpha and beta, but you know, if you have your production environments and stuff, you're gonna take your time. You're going to be piecemeal on this. And I saw this in and around the migrations because, you know, we looked at 2 migrations, you know, the strangler pattern and then just in situ and deliver over straight away. And we were saying, yeah, people do it that way if you're doing it one way or the other, but we found the in between. So people were, you know, they were taking over maybe a couple of releases, they were testing that out, making sure it was okay, making sure the upgrades on it worked. And then they were looking for capability. So we had a cleanup capability in the plugin that just cleaned everything out. And then they said, no, we just want to clean up capability to take a release out. So you could see requirements coming in. And, you know, it's only a tool, and Matt hit on it there. It's, you know, eventually it'll be sunset or it won't be needed anymore. But, you know, to get the people over there, get them using it, you know, look at all the good work that Adam and the rest of the people have done on this over years of architecting it, seen, you know, where things have shifted from whatever 2015 or 16 when Helm 2 came out, and now 2019, 20, where we are now with Helm 3, you know, to see those changes and to move over. So I think that's something that I'm excited. I'm looking forward to seeing people going over there. And, you know, and also people maybe reading the documentation, you know, because we've good documentation out there, folks. So if you get a chance, read that. Because why I laugh at this is the funny one that Adam said earlier. I don't know how many times in the last 9 months or however many months Helm 3 is out, Helm init can't find the command anymore. Okay, so we told you Helm init is gone. Have a look at those docs, folks, because yeah, and just go there.
Nice. All right, thank you, Martin. And Adam, what are you looking at? What do you think people should check out?
Well, I'm just excited to see how the project's grown. I've been on the Helm project almost full time since day 1 of Helm. So this is very exciting to see how Helm has grown. And I'm always very much deep in the weeds of it. So I think right now, after a major release, I go into stability mode. So that's kind of my focus now, is just making sure everything's working the way it should. Stuff's easy to develop on. You know, it's easy to write new test cases, and good developer experience, because that's the level I'm looking at.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, and I'm gonna put Karen on the spot and just say, hey, Karen, if people want to find some Helm community stuff, where should they look, and what is interesting?
Yeah, I think checking out the Helm Twitter account, it's at HelmPack, will give you the most up-to-date information. So definitely check out our Twitter. Our Helm site, or helm.sh, also has a Helm blog that our maintainers will often use. And if any of you are interested in contributing as well, it's definitely something we can discuss. And yeah, we also have developer calls every Thursday at 9:30 Pacific time in the morning.
Excellent, awesome. Okay, I think we're just about out of time, so I will ask if anybody has any final thing they want to say before Karen takes us home.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. All right, well, I think we'll go ahead and wrap up. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Matt, Martin, Adam, and Bridget, for this presentation. That is all the time we have for today. Thank you for joining us. The webinar will be online later today, and we look forward to everyone joining us at a future CNCF webinar. Thanks, and have a great day.